Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you're watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I want to tell you about 10 of the best new release movies that are included with your Prime Video subscription. So these are going to be the best movies from 2019. So all fairly recent releases that are included with Prime Video at the time that I'm posting this. If you're from the future and these are no longer available on Prime, the weird thing about Prime that always confuses people is that these movies will still be available, but they will cost money. As of the time of me posting this, and probably for a while, these will all be included, and quite a few of them are Prime originals as well, so they'll be included indefinitely. But let's start this list off with my bottom two. My number 10 and number 9 picks are tepid picks because they're not for everybody, and the reason they both miss the mark is they feature characters that are mentally handicapped, and those performances are by far the weakest. So the first one is The Fanatic. Now I'll be very brief with this one because this is a pseudo horror movie kind of a thing, directed by none other than Fred Durst.
So what you wanna do?
Yeah, that Fred Durst. It's his first time directing, and in this, John Travolta. Yeah, that John Travolta plays a mentally handicapped adult, and he goes for broke with this, and he fails. He's horrible. He's funny at times, but the tone is all wrong. However, the reason it even makes the list is it sounds way worse than it is. There is something to this movie in the sense that I will be watching what Fred Durst does next, because there's something happening here that works, and had John Travolta not flubbed it, this may have been a decent movie that could have had some sort of cult following, but instead Travolta goes in this like Tommy Wiseau direction, yet the movie has some very redeeming qualities as well, including the performance by Devon Sawa, which is kind of a meta performance, and then it's got some edgier elements. This is this weird movie that's not bad enough to be remembered for being bad, and it's not really good enough to be remembered at all. That said, if you're interested in this one and haven't watched it, I was surprised at how much good there was in this movie. I said it'd be quick, but I had to articulate and explain why that one's even on the list, and I gotta do the same for Night Hunter, which is a total sleeper of a movie, and it's because there's a character in here who's mentally handicapped, which can be done right. It's not done right here. The performance that the actor gives is really pretty intense, but, you know, when you've got a guy urinating inside a prison cell on the window and dumping food on a teddy bear, and it's supposed to be this tense, like he's potentially like a serial killer, it just looks silly. Take that out of the equation, and you've got an incredible performance, maybe the best performance I've ever seen from Henry Cavill. He plays this sort of broken cop, and he really does a great job. Stanley Tucci's in it, Ben Kingsley's in it, Alexandria Daddario is punching above her weight in this. It's got a hell of a cast, and then it just has these weird elements that didn't quite work. It's also got some weird things that like cops would never do, but if you can overlook some of those things, there's a lot of really good things happening here, and it has some, like, I don't want to say Silence of the Lambs because it's nowhere near that good of a movie, but it has some elements like that, and I can see what they were trying to go for, and they missed it by not more than that, but not by a ton, and I did think it was a good watch. That said, let's get those two out of the way and let's knuckle down on some stronger recommendations. Now this one is a much stronger recommendation, but it is not for everybody. This one is called Serenity, and it's got another big cast. It's Anne Hathaway, Matthew McConaughey. I only just now realized that their names actually rhyme. Jason Clarke plays a really good bad guy. Diane Lane has a really small role. And this has got elements of your like sort of sexy murder, mystery, thriller kind of a thing. Yet it's got a very odd twist to it. Normally I wouldn't give that away, but you need to know that going into it. Now, I would never say what it is, but if you get hit over the head with the twist in this movie, it seems wrong. But if you know that there's something really odd and strange and like almost on like a sci-fi kind of level, then I think it's kind of cool. It's got like a Black Mirror element to it, but it was so out of left field when this movie came out last year. I think it turned a lot of people off. Had they marketed it that way, I think this would have been a much more successful movie because it's beautifully shot, really well acted, and it is a clever and sort of interesting concept. You just have to know what you're getting into. It's sort of like thinking you're gonna take a sip of wine and you get cranberry juice. There's nothing wrong with cranberry juice, but I would spit it out if I thought I was getting wine. That's kind of what happens with this movie, but if you know you're getting cranberry juice, it's pretty decent cranberry juice. Fast Color is another sleeper that is surprisingly good, but it is a very small movie, even compared to some of the other ones we just talked about. And it's got a sci-fi element. It's in the future, water is scarce, and there's this woman who has like these powers that are fairly uncontrollable, and she's sort of on the run. That's basically all you need to know. This one got a little bit bogged down with story, but that's not necessarily a terrible thing. There's way worse things that could happen to a movie. Yet I liked a lot of the elements. There were some really good performances. I thought the way the movie started, like the first 15 minutes were really great. And then again, it starts to get kind of bogged down on the story, but really interesting concept and a pretty good delivery, especially considering it's like this smaller movie most of you've never heard of, hiding out on Prime Video right now. Now, let's up the ante a little bit with The Prodigy. This is a horror movie that came out last year that got a little bit, like a tiny, tiny bit of buzz. And this one is not for everybody, mainly because it's about a evil child. That is a rough subject for some people. It's mostly people that have kids. I would not let Mrs. Van Dam watch this because it would have terrified her. I thought it was pretty effective though. It's really creepy. The kid has some Damien vibes. They give a lot of this away in the trailer. They give a lot of this away in the trailers and the marketing for it, but I thought it delivered really well. It's got some sinister stuff. To me, this one surprised me in the sense that I kind of couldn't believe they were letting the kid do some of the things he was doing on camera. I think they fudged it a little bit with camera angles so that the kid wasn't maybe aware of what was going to be depicted on screen, because some of the stuff that this kid does in this movie is intense. And it's wild. And again, it all worked together really well. This one could have maybe been more successful than it was had it been marketed properly. But if you're in the mood for a horror movie and the kid thing doesn't turn you off, this is a pretty good pick. Before moving on to my top 5, if you like this type of content and you're new here, please click the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you get notified when I put out new videos like this one, but different. All right, and my top 5 is way stronger than the bottom 5, and the reason that some of those movies were not just total gems is because I've narrowed this list down to ones that came out in 2019. But Honey Boy is one that got a lot of buzz. And so for people that don't know, this is written by Shia LaBeouf and he stars in it, and he's playing the role of his own abusive father, which is really kind of an intense concept. So when Shia LaBeouf was a kid, he was a child star. He was on the Disney Channel. I watched him and I called it. I was probably 15 and I used to watch him on Even Stevens, and he was so good and had such good comedic timing. I said, that kid is gonna be a star. And turns out he turned into a huge star, and he really sort of went off the rails. And Honey Boy tries to depict that from sort of like a fictional, it's true to life, but all the names are changed, and it's the story of this actor who's struggling, going through therapy, and uncovering the fact that this abusive father is sort of the source of all of his pain. I hate to give this spoiler, but there's not sexual abuse, there's not a lot of physical abuse. It's more of just this weird relationship that this horrible man had where he was basically leeching off of his son. And it's a very interesting watch, and it's really well directed, but it's not a feel-good movie. On that note, a feel-good movie that I was surprised how much I liked, I mean, it's ranked pretty high, is Fighting With My Family. This is based on a true story about a family from the UK that were wrestlers. They were amateur wrestlers, and one of them went on to become a pro wrestler in the WWE. And they're a little dishonest in the marketing for this one. They feature The Rock on the poster, and I know he was a producer, he was involved with this project. He's in 2 scenes. He's not really in this movie much, but it's a really good movie, and it's a good family movie for families with older kids, young, like tweens and up, because there's some language and there's obviously a lot of the wrestling violence and stuff. And there's just a lot of subject matter that really young kids are not going to understand. Coming of age kind of stuff, not really my cup of tea. Those are both great. Vince Vaughn has a very big role in it, and he is fantastic. Now, that's not a surprise. I'm a fan of Vince Vaughn, but it's been a while since I've seen him in something that I really liked and liked him in. And this, I was surprised to see him have such a robust role. And then the supporting cast is all great, and again, just really good story. It didn't feel too formulaic. It felt fairly real, and it was just, again, just surprisingly good. So now that I got a feel-good one out of the way, One Child Nation is a really tough watch. This one is about China's one-child policy, and it's directed by a woman who was a only child in China, and it's really intense. It really digs deep. I've been familiar with the one-child policy for a while. I did not realize how intense the enforcement of that was, and this documentary really dives into it. I have to give a huge warning though on this one, and they put one up as soon as you start watching it. Take it seriously. There are some really graphic images in this documentary, not throughout the whole thing, but when they show up, it's intense, and it's important though. I think it's important for people to know and understand what happened in China, because now they have a two-child policy. It's not like it's gone. And this went up to 2015 too. So it's not like this is ancient history. And I think it's important for us to be aware of what's going on in the world, especially for things as intense as this, where people have been controlled. It's rough stuff, but I thought it was really well put together and very informative.
Can I help you, sir?
And who have we here?
This is my son.
Company boy.
Not looking for any more company, sir.
Yeah, I bet.
Light of My Life is another sleeper that was directed by Casey Affleck and got no buzz last year. He's great in it. It's really well directed by him. It's really well written. It's a fantastic movie. He has sort of a checkered social life, from what I understand. I don't know too many details about it, but I suspect that might be why this movie didn't get any more buzz. But this one's very much like The Road. It takes place after some sort of apocalypse, but it's not really a post-apocalyptic movie. There's been some sort of a collapse, and this man and his daughter, his coming of age, again, teenage, I think she's like 12-ish, daughter is just living out in the woods with him, and they're just trying to survive. It's very much like The Road, but not as bleak as The Road. Not quite as bleak as The Road. It's maybe, it almost feels like it's in the same universe, but maybe not quite as far down the dark path as The Road went. If you liked The Road, there's a lot to like here. If The Road was maybe just a little bit too intense for you, I think there's also a lot to like here, because this doesn't go to those super, super dark places, but still very intense, very harrowing at moments. And again, really well directed by Casey Affleck. I'm looking forward to what he does next. So I failed to mention that Florence Pugh, who got nominated for an Academy Award for Little Women last year. She stars in Fighting With My Family. Well, she also stars in Midsommar. You could call it Midsommar if you want, but it's Midsommar. And this, it makes the top of the list for a couple of reasons. But I have to say, while it's the same director as Hereditary, I didn't like it as much. I felt like it was a little overlong and maybe reached for the brass ring and didn't quite get it. But for anyone who complains about Hollywood churning out the same stuff over and over again, Midsommar feels new and different, and also feels like a classic horror movie at the same time. It's got these two elements interwoven, which is why it makes my #1 pick. I watched it, man, probably 6 months ago now, and I still think about it. That's the mark of a good movie. Doesn't mean I particularly loved it, because it's just grim and just kind of icky, but it really sticks with you, and I put a lot of value in that. I think it's really well executed. It's a simple concept that's very well executed over the course of about like 2 hours and 15 minutes. And again, for horror fans, it's something new and sort of inventive that's going to spark other new things. That's what makes it a little bit important. If you didn't like it, you didn't like it, but there's something there that's worth talking about, which is why I wanted to put it here at number 1. Let me know which ones in the comments you plan on watching or which ones you liked. I know you're gonna tell me which ones you hated. While you're in the comments, give this video a like. It'll help the video get more views, and it'll also show all of these Patreon supporters that you appreciate all the support that they're doing. They're giving their cold, hard-earned cash to help support the show, help keep things running. You may have noticed lately I'm putting out more content. You have this video today because of the Patreon supporters, but I will keep making videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this one, and you will see me on the next one.